Hello, Kerry.
Hi.
I'm speaking with Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot, and many people, of course, know Kerry, but we are now recording from Europe, so maybe we have new viewers here in Europe. Could you please just introduce yourself and Project Camelot?
Oh, hi. I'm Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot. I'm sorry to be moving around here. And just want to say I'm very happy to be here.
Kerry, I'm sorry, but something is. Um, now I can see that it's working. Sorry. Uh,
Okay. So sorry about this. So I'm Kerry Cassidy from Project Camelot. I am an investigative reporter, documentary filmmaker, and I've been investigating all aspects of conspiracies in our world for the last almost 13 years now, and have a very large YouTube channel with quite a large following.
Yeah, and it's Project Camelot, and your homepage is projectcamelot.tv and
ProjectCamelot.tv or ProjectCamelot.org or ProjectCamelotPortal.com. It's all the same URL.
yeah, and you have many whistleblowers who are not only top secret but above top secret. So you have interviewed many. Is it 700 people you have interviewed?
At least, yes. Well, it may be more than that because I also did a radio show, and some of that was disappeared. But I did about 5 years of radio as well.
Yeah, many interviews and many conferences. You have even own conferences, Aware and Awake, or Awake and Aware, and you have been in Prague, here in Prague, and was it 2016, and gave a lecture. At least 100,000 people have seen it, so it was popular, I believe. And I would like to talk about some of your latest interviews with Deborah Tavares and Kerry Berner. Yeah, Kerry Berner, she talked with you about a nano domestic girl. Nano.
Yes. She's a former nun, or I think that's what she calls herself. And she has left the Catholic Church, and you can watch her interview on my YouTube channel, obviously. And she's talking about how in the process of protesting what was in essence sort of sexual advances by a priest, I believe he was, and her reaction to all of that, and then also that she became sort of a person who other priests would go to with their problems with basically pedophilia type and unwanted sexual advances from various, I don't know if you call them clergymen or what the word is, and that she then was targeted as a targeted individual and found herself being embedded with nanotechnology and of all kinds. And she went to 2 doctors who basically verified that her body was in essence infected by this nanotech, and then she worked very hard to actually turn it off. In most cases, it wasn't that it could be removed so much as turned off. And so she went through certain dietary changes. She also sort of lives her life on the run. She's always moving around. And she testifies to this effect. And because she has doctors that back up her story, it's quite impressive. and it does indicate that the result of the targeting and the nano comes also from the chemtrails, etc. So all of that is in her testimony.
Yeah, and I highly recommend the 2 interviews you have done. I have heard, I have listened to it, and it was also, she said that she was operated, they have operated her, and she has found out that there were a doctor who was not unnamed, and then she found out that it was they put something in her, wasn't it so? Operated in. I believe she said something like that to you, that somebody had been in the operation, a medical doctor without a name.
Yes. Well, initially she had certain illness that was a result of the targeting, and one doctor that was, I guess, part of the plot, so to speak, seemed to have put something into her which involved the nano and various implants, which often go with nanotechnology when implanted, implants in her body. And she then had that removed. I think she said it was in her sinuses or, some area of the face. And that was found and taken out and removed.
Yeah, and they offered her, if she will be quiet, they offered her, what did she tell to you, 100 million? No, it can't, 100 million?
I don't remember
a lot of money, which was ridiculous if she shut up. Just, it was amazing. I have now contact with Kerry, and we will do interview maybe in the second half of October. So I want to thank you that you made the contact possible. Thank you. And what I wanted to ask you, if when she spoke about this nano domestic well in municipal water, in Pepsi, Coca-Cola, Nestle, and so, I recognized it directly from YouTube channel Rev Michelle Hopkins from October 2013, and I sent to you like 2 videos, and it was DARPA who has worked on this nano-domestic, as I understand. It was highly classified before, and what she said, is Rev Michelle Hopkins and her, the man who, I don't remember his name, the person who wrote this, the whistleblower. And so, as I understood it, that in first stage you will get it inside your body by consumption of these beverages, and then you can have it in your body for a long time, and then if they would like to get rid of you, that they activate it, and the way they activate it is by cell phone towers or by drone. They send special frequency, and they activate the nanoprocessor, and what happens is that you get influenza-like symptoms, and you are dead within 10-12 days, and that it's 98% or almost over 98% people die. So it sounds really diabolical. They can get one person as a whistleblower, or they can take a whole population. So when I heard that in October 2013, I spread the information directly, because we have to neutralize all their attacks. So have you heard anything about this part, that it's the way how to kill us? It's a...
Well, I know, I mean, we've known for many years that they have been doing this. Kerry Berner is one of the first witnesses to come out who is able to sort of substantiate it with the doctor's records and all of that. She's a very good record keeper of everything that happened to her. And so as far as whether they can actually do this or kill people, in groups and so on, and I don't know whether or not you can. She basically feels that she was able to overcome it using certain techniques involving meditation, as well as I believe diet, if I understand it correctly, and she did build herself a sort of a Faraday cage, I think she called it, and to protect herself ultimately from a lot of what was going on. And so, at the moment, we don't have evidence that they've killed groups of people, large groups, or anything like that. We believe that that supposedly they can, and certainly even this is something that might not be completely traceable, because if people are eating this nano-infected food and then they come down with an illness, it may not be so easy to detect what the situation is in terms of groups of people being sort of infected, and where where it's all coming from, etc. So yes, it exists, but proving it is another matter at this time, I think.
Yeah. And
I do believe that you can raise your frequency, also meditate to basically turn off these implants and ultimately take control of your own body. So you may not be completely at the mercy of this.
Yeah. Then there was this it was several interviews with Deborah Tavares you have done, wasn't it? So on different subjects, even it was the fires in California, especially, and other types of genocide.
Well, the fires, I mean, I recently did an interview with Simon Parks, and this was a very important interview because he is talking about, he verified what one of my witnesses, Captain Mark Richards, has said about the Northern California fires, that specifically that was an alien-human battle, became a battleground, and the fire, from what I understand, was a cover to cover what was really going on. The fires were started and created by actually, I believe, helicopters using directed energy weapons. And so this is what was going on in Northern California. But Deborah Tavares is not so much aware of that aspect as she is of simply the population. There is a desire to clear the coasts of population at this time. So they're targeting certain areas with fires, etc. We know they started the fires also in Oregon, and they also, I believe, started them down here in the greater Los Angeles, Santa Barbara area. And so there have been movements to basically using what we call weather wars, various weapons, hurricanes, fire, etc., storms, to move people away from the coastlines, to free up land, to not allow people, once they move away during a crisis, a lot of times they can't come back and they can't get their houses, they can't insure their land anymore, they can't. And so Deborah Tavares is talking a lot about that. She has, she's someone who follows the documentation, so she gets basically documents that verify how the Rothschild owned PG&E and various energy organizations, companies that are under the Rothschild Rockefeller control, to basically create situations in which these directed energy weapons, et cetera, are operational. And so humans are under these, in essence, weather weapons. And the recent hurricane called Florence, there's evidence that this is such a energy, directed energy weapon, was probably apply to that. And I believe that the HARP system augments all of it. I think Simon Parkes is quite correct when he says that you first need the basics to be there. So you're going to have a small system of some kind, weather-wise or in terms of whatever they intend to augment, whether it be a volcanic eruption or et cetera, or storm, and then they escalate it through use of weaponry.
Yeah, and she talked also about a weapon in the ocean, I believe nuclear weapon also, that could cause tsunami and kill 100 million people. I believe it was what was planning for east coast of your country on 17th of October 2013. The week, it was a Thursday, and what's his name in Japan, who is in contact with Secret Service a lot, Benjamin Fulford. He has reported that from that Thursday, that your government or the officials were hiding during the whole weekend, and nobody knew where they were. They hired your debt ceiling on the 16th of October 2013. Then they perished. On 17th was the report that the weapon will hit the tsunami will hit your east coast. And first 1 week after, I have heard that in Puerto Rico, they have brought their FEMA coffins, a lot of FEMA coffins, in the same period of time. So I understand that they wanted to hit the whole east of your country. But before the attack, I saw only New York. I saw that the tsunami will hit I saw only New York. But of course, if you shall...
but that didn't happen.
It was prevented. But I mean that your government...
What did happen is Fukushima. Fukushima there was a nuke planted to the coast of Honshu, helped create the result of Fukushima.
And on Miles Johnston...
But this East Coast thing in 2013 never happened. So they try lots of things, but some of them don't work. And of course, we do have people in the government, what we call white hats, that are working to stop them from some of these things. But of course, they have the technology. We know that. They also North Korea has this kind of technology, apparently, as well as China and Russia.
Yeah, it's like they have the technology to kill us if they would like to. It's like if the madman comes forward, they could do it. So we know that they have genocidal methods. And so Miles Johnston has some Michael Prince that you have interviewed also. What's his name? Michael Prince, his name he used another James Casbolt. And James Casbolt told to Miles Johnston that one day before Fukushima, that some Secret Service guy came to him and like that they should stop it or prevent it. So he knew 1 day before Fukushima that it will happen, James Casbolt. So of course it was a false flag. It killed many people. So yeah. Then you have interviewed people that you have interviewed before also. So you have done like new interviews with John D'Souza. He's also very interesting. He's a former FBI, isn't he? John D'Souza.
Yes. Very interesting guy. He's testifying as to his own take on what the sort of, I think, psychic abilities and that sort of thing. And he's talking a lot about how various people are targeted and who are involved in criminal activities or whatever, and are sort of targeted individuals in essence. Also, there's a psychic background to a lot of crimes that are committed. So that's his area of expertise. And we talked, on many topics. Again, this is an interview that I suggest people watch on my channel, to learn more about his views.
Yeah. And you are finished with your book, as I understand, your own book.
Well, I am finished with the writing of it. I'm in the editing phase at this time, and that's quite extensive. It turns out the book is probably somewhere around 500 pages, so it's quite long, and I'm trying to kind of edit it and make sure that I can cut out anything extra that's in there, and it's also very difficult formatting it and all of that. So, but I hope to have it done sometime in the next couple months.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of pictures there also from your trips, or?
No, there's no pictures.
No, because you have done
just words. Yeah, it's it's not. I don't really. It's not that kind of thing. I mean, I'm not. There will be links to my interviews, but this is going to be more my views on the various topics I cover, etc. So that's what it's really about. There's a bit of the Camelot story in there from the early days, as well as my own sort of childhood and various exposure to ETs, etc., time travel, you name it, and things of that nature.
Yeah, you have done a lot of trips with Maria Wheatley, or and you are planning again to go to, is it Egypt?
Yes, we went to Egypt. In fact, we're just completing a documentary, myself and my partner, Neil Anthony Sanford, who's helping with the editing, and he did the filming when we were in Egypt. So we have a short documentary that we're going to be putting out, and I'll be interviewing Maria Wheatley on my show on Tuesday of this coming week, assuming things go as planned, and we'll be talking about our upcoming trip to Egypt. There is, you can buy, you can reserve your space at this time by, I think it's a $500 deposit, and so all that information is on my website under the events tab. So you just go to the top menu to events, and you'll see the Egypt trip there. And yeah, it's a fabulous trip, and we have special access when we go to spend time as a group in the Great Pyramid, as well as with the Sphinx, in the various temples around Egypt as well, and it's quite an interesting adventure. And we may have some other speakers at this time. I'm not at liberty to give their names, but there may be some surprise speakers that join us. So we're waiting for that information to come through one of these days. And yeah, so that's, I do Awaken Aware conferences also, so I have footage on my Vimeo that we sell for a very low price for each speaker's presentation, and all of that is available on the Vimeo, and you can get to that by going to projectcamelot.tv, and you'll see, if you scroll down, the various Awaken Aware conferences that I've held. I think I've got, I don't know, something like 4 or 5 that I conducted in England that are now available. So
it's great. And now next week you are going to meet Mark Richards.
Yes, this will be the 9th time I interview him, I believe, and I have 8 interviews with him. He is in prison. He's what we call a political prisoner. You could call him an exo-political prisoner if you want to look at it like that. He's in jail simply because he goes up against the controllers, the current controllers of the planet, and he was framed for a murder, supposedly for masterminding a murder, not for being the perpetrator of a murder. And he is innocent, and in fact, recently in my interview with Simon Parks, Simon has a lot of contacts in the intelligence community as well as the British, I guess, higher levels of certain aspects of the British and maybe intelligence community and or what you might call it, I don't know if you call it administration, whatever. Anyway, and he gets information. He says that he believes Mark Richards has a very high likelihood of being freed and pardoned, as it's called, if they are able to carry out some arrests that they're planning to do of the pedophiles, etc. So it is said that the Trump administration, the military that backs him, are going to be putting out something like, I think it's a huge number, 400,000. It's 40,000. I guess it's 40,000. Some say 50,000 indictments. So those arrests are supposed to take place, according to Simon, sometime at the end of this month, which is September, and going into October. So he says that it's possible during this time that we may have some services such as electricity and various other services could be interrupted if there is a kind of a battle on the ground between the dark and the light, so to speak, with regard to carrying out these indictments. And so that he's saying that that's what's maybe going to happen.
Mm-hmm. It's have you have heard something about Jordan Maxwell, that he's homeless again, or that? Or
well, actually, I haven't heard that directly from Jordan. So someone said that to me in my chat during a show, but I was in touch with Jordan. I invited him to come as a speaker to Egypt because he's very knowledgeable about all the symbolism, etc., and it would be lovely to have him on board. But he is feeling that he's too elderly to travel in this way at this time. I'm not sure that he is actually homeless. That may or may not be true. He was living in Colorado. He was actually, I guess, being helped or hosted by at least a portion of Gaiam TV or Jay Widener. I'm not sure what the arrangement is or was. He was going to be giving them some information in exchange for their help, but I don't know if that's still continuing or if that fell through.
Yeah. And what do you think about the whole Nibiru? How you ask many people, I understand, but what do you believe?
Well, I've been interviewing someone named Eddie Page, who claims to be a Pleiadian, sort of it's a kind of an Anunnaki warrior, really, but he claims to be from the Pleiades and that the Pleiadians are related to the Anunnaki. But at any rate, he has been talking a lot about the coming, that Yellowstone may blow, and Yellowstone is a super volcano if that happens. And I have another witness called Richard Allen Miller, who's a physicist who I've interviewed many times. And they're both thinking that Yellowstone may be triggered one way or another. I happen to think that the information is that it'll be triggered by the Illuminati, by their weather wars technology, which is they have what are in essence earthquake weapons, and this is tectonic weapons. This has been known for quite a number of years, but they have the ability to trigger volcanoes as well, and it is said that certain fracking and various things also encourage this to happen. But Yellowstone is already an active volcano. It's never not been active. Everyone knows this. So I guess triggering it wouldn't be that difficult. But at any rate, that seems, according to Eddie Page, seems, according to Eddie Page, it's linked somehow to the return of Nibiru. Whether this is indeed the case and whether it will be triggered by Nibiru in some kind of way. In other words, that I guess the idea that the planet will come close to our planet and therefore trigger a lot of Earth changes, especially volcanism. It's entirely possible if such a planetoid, or it's actually a system, the Nibiru is part of a group of planets, and you can look at the work of Andy Lloyd to see how that's described, but it's like a mini solar system. And Nibiru is one of the planets that circulate a brown dwarf that periodically are said to come in through our system almost perpendicular to our sort of the galactic center, I guess you call it. But there's conflicting testimony as to whether that's really the case and how close it is at this time. So it's really not clear. But if such a thing was to happen, then it's possible these other things might also happen. The tectonic, the plates could move, and there could be renewed volcanism, and that would trigger. If Yellowstone blows, then it could trigger the other volcanoes in our area, specifically on the West Coast. So there's a lot of different volcanoes, Mount Rainier and Mount Mammoth, which is still active, an active caldera, and others going up into Northern California and above.
I have seen, in the year 2013-14, the information from the Illuminati YouTube channel that the Nibiru flyby will occur in the end of 2017, and also Bob Dean said something about the end of 2017. So I still believe that they were preparing some kind of military, some kind of operation that they would call that it's flyby, and maybe use it as a mind control. That maybe people would give them their children to be saved, and we would give other things. So they would need to fight us so much that we would give them, like ourselves, like the children, what they want, the children also. So I believe there was some kind of military operation planned in the end of 2017 that they would call, oh, Nibiru is coming, it's why this is happening, and they would fake something. But if a real Nibiru flyby will come later, I don't know. I don't see any information right now from them, from the Illuminati. So,
well, I mean, there could be something going on. I mean, right now we have this the solar observatories that were closed down, not just in New Mexico, but around the world. And actually, Simon Parks also validates that from his sources, that the other solar observatories, which was also in the news, were shut down. So that the reason they said that they shut down the one that came out in the press recently due to some kind of illegal things going on in the U.S. Solar Observatory in New Mexico was not true. I did a lot of investigation on that and have a deep sort of secret source who was in essence tapping into the chatter among astronomers, and what seemed to be going on is that they had been using technology that is very similar to the quantum mechanics mechanical device that Eamon Ansbro, an astronomer I interviewed in Ireland twice, actually. I have a recent interview with him also, and he and a group of scientists were working on a technology that would allow them to go out beyond our solar system and communicate with various ET races intergalactically, so to speak, and in a superluminal way using this quantum mechanics. However, we don't know what technology they were really using. It is simply that I got some evidence that indicates some similar technology to what Eamon Ansbro and his group were working on. They, however, were being blocked at a certain juncture. So at this time, I don't know how successful they have been in their efforts. I do know that I was told by an insider that Eamon Ansbro and his technology would never be allowed to operate because the secret space program would not let them be successful. So they may be being sabotaged in essence. And the Solar Observatory groups seem to have been using that to try to, again, communicate with ET, if you want to call it that. And they were getting apparently some communication coming back and forth. There are some indicators that my sort of secret witness sent me in this regard. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect is that, according to Simon Parkes, there were, and also my source, there are ships close to the sun, which periodically there are often ships, even photographed by, for example, John Leonard Walson many years ago photographed some amazing ships near the sun. And it's known that they do fuel up on the sun and then leave again. But in this case, they're saying that they were adjusting the frequency of the sun because it is affecting the consciousness on planet Earth, and that they were, what is not clear is whether they were doing it in a good way or a bad way. Simon seems to think they were, whoever it is had craft near the sun is affecting it, and maybe in a positive way. But we don't know this for a fact. This is simply what his sources are saying. So there's definitely something going on with the sun. There was indications in fact, I have a video that I played during my interview with Simon that a source gave me showing activity on the sun that looked very much like a possible CME that was headed towards Earth that might have been redirected at that point, turned back upon itself, or something of this nature. So, I mean, we don't know the exact story, but we have these parameters that are a lot closer to the truth based on the evidence I have than some of the stories that were being put out about the Solar Observatory.
Then I would like to ask you about, you have interviewed Anthony Patch, and it's especially CERN about it. And I have seen many times since 2014, I believe, the expression from the Illuminati, CERN, Hoover Dam attack, like something really huge. And they have described it how they would do it. And it's like to cause a wormhole to shortcut to Saturn. So first when I heard it, such a rubbish it can be. But then when I learned more and more, and also the Illuminati show many things what they are planning in advertisement and pop music videos. So still, if you have seen Ariana Grande's God is a woman, or she believes God is a woman, I can see this CERN Hoover Dam represent there also. Like when she threw something in the Pantheon and you see like women's, like it for me is the Illuminati representation of the false of the attack, CERN Hoover Dam attack, how they have expressed it with words. And have you heard anything about this, like CERN Hoover Dam?
Well, I'm aware of the idea of, of an attack there, but no, I haven't. We don't have any whistleblowers really talking about that at this time. a few years back, there was somebody who was communicating with me who thought that something might be imminent back in those days, but nothing happened. It is heavily guarded, and certainly if they want to trigger it, I'm sure they can. But at this time, I don't have any information about that.
Yeah, it would be terribly dangerous if it would work first for your country and then for us others, because it would start in your country, but then it would spread. So I hope, and it's also strange that I try to see just the pieces what I get there here and there, and Anthony Patch, I believe, said that the code, something with code with regard to CERN is 4069 or 4096, and it says to me something. And 40, I have seen the number in very different, like Operation 40 or 40 days this, and they sent 40 dead bodies. It's like I was thinking who they are worshipping here. The code for Enki is 40. So I just try to put these pieces together and understand the Illuminati, because they are talking, they are using information, but you have to understand it.
Sure. Well, I mean, I understand the symbolism, and a lot of this sort of thing goes on constantly with numerical symbolism, coded messages between themselves. Certainly the attack in Vegas, for example, is one of those times when there's a lot of symbolism going on behind the scenes. But at this moment, I don't have information really regarding specifically Hoover Dam. I can say that it, as well as other places, would be triggered all at the same time, as well as various power plants, nuclear power plants on the West Coast, for example, could be triggered by earthquakes, as well as tsunamis if things like that went on. And this is true of the East Coast, also the New Madrid Fault. So, I mean, there are always strategic places that they can hit. If you look at the work of Ashiana Dean, she talks about certain configurations and vortexes that have to do, they call them trumpets, and they also connect certain areas of the East Coast with Mexico underground and undersea, and then they can send a pulse in certain areas through Montauk, for example. And but I can say that at least one of my witnesses, Mark Richards, talks about CERN being used to keep a portal open for the Draco to bring equipment through, and that it actually goes, from what I understand, to the Draco constellation. So that's part of what CERN is involved in, is obviously portals and opening them, and possibly bringing in various ET races, using them for transport.
Yeah. They have fixed immunity for themselves in CERN, so something fishy they probably work with. Otherwise, they wouldn't need an immunity, I feel. So, yeah, today we were talking with Ole Dammegård and Cody Snodgrass, and we talked to Jim Fetzer. So I will put it later next week on my YouTube channel, my new YouTube channel, and also now this interview with you, I will put it there on my YouTube channel also. So yeah, if somebody would like to see Jim Fetzer or Ole and Cody, so it's
Okay.
and you, of course, but you will put it maybe on your own channel. So yeah.
We can tell people how to get to your website, or wherever it is that they need to go to access your footage.
Yeah, thank you. And You have contact with John Lear.
Yes, actually, John Lear is quite active at this time. He's been posting on Facebook a lot. He does post on my Facebook and various updates and dialogues of things going on, his observations, etc. He does want to come back on my show, so he will be coming back on the show in the near future.
Oh, it's great. It's great to see him and to watch the interviews. And Kerry, how does it feel? It's over 17 years now since 9/11, and it's 70 years plus now, and still, like, nothing happened to the real criminals who has done it. How does it feel for you as American?
Well, I mean, we certainly know that Israel was involved, and so we're members of the upper, executive of the U.S. at the time. Obviously, the Bushes, etc., and these people are not being prosecuted or in any way. This is just normal. I mean, since the time they killed Kennedy, was basically a coup that happened in our government. So the government was taken over at that time, and from then on, we have been living under, what is in essence a kind of a martial law, and our rights were taken away with 9/11. More rights were taken away at that time with the Patriot Act, etc. So this is, I guess you might say, normal. We don't, obviously this is something we fight, that the resistance is all about bringing awareness to wake people up as to the real truth of what's going on around us. But that's the state of affairs here, but it's also around the world. Every government is in on this conspiracy. They're all basically under the heel of either China or the US or Russia. And so it just depends who they're sort of loyal to, if you want to call it that. And certainly the Illuminati are worldwide. So it's a worldwide story, not just centered on the US.
Yeah. So it's, and before we finish this, is it something that you would like to say, some announcement that you will do another interview with somebody important or anything?
Well, I mean, I am going to be interviewing Mark Richards. I do want to thank everyone who has contributed to make this trip possible. We did put a call out saying, I did need funds to do this. I'm hoping to interview somebody else, if at all possible. We have to see if that's going to transpire while I'm traveling. And so that's kind of exciting. I can say that I have a tremendous amount of new work on Project Camelot, as always, and so there's hours and hours of video interviews to watch and to learn from, and this story kind of continues at this time. Obviously, we're all part of what is in essence a fight to get the truth out, and these various things that are going on are very important. There's also more information about the satellites that were turned off, in essence redirected in some cases, and QAnon has also put out information about this happening, as well as Simon Parks has information about the Black Knight satellites. Eddie Page is now talking about that as well. Apparently we had help with the code, at least according to Simon, from a certain group of the Pleiadians. And so this is, it's a war of worlds in essence, what we have going on here on planet Earth. And more the truth is coming out, and it will continue to come out. And you just have to be awake and aware and looking at all of the various news items and understanding that they may lie to you about what's really going on, but you can at least see the surface and then use your intuition and research to put together the real story underneath the story, so to speak. So I encourage people to do that. I recently made my own video kind of explaining my philosophy, the fact that I don't necessarily agree with the people I interview, but that my job is to investigate, to get their testimony so that people can, in essence, make up their own mind, to ask the good questions that reveal whether they have inconsistencies in their testimony, whether it's illogical in certain ways, whether things may or may not connect, and so on. So that's available on my website. I called it Don't Shoot the Messenger, because I find often that people are thinking that journalists, people that are investigating truth, are actually taking a certain position. And other than wanting the most positive outcome for humanity, I don't tend to take a firm position on my whistleblowers or people I interview. I simply, as I say, try to get their story out in the most clear way, so that they have a platform from which to share the knowledge that they have, and understanding that no one person has all truth, that in fact, most witnesses will give you a portion of the truth and some falsity. So it's kind of being discerning, learning discernment, and being able to determine how much of what anyone is saying is real truth. And you have to decide that for yourself.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kerry. And it will be interesting to see the videos, the future videos, and all your work. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Alexandria. You take care.
Take care. Bye-bye.